Fourth, 2018 workshop meeting of the Park District of Highland Park is called to order at 6:02 p.m. Kathy, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bernstein and Commissioner Flores-Weisskopf are not here yet. Commissioner Grossberg.
Here.
Vice President Ruttenberg.
I'm here.
President Kaplan.
I'm here. Okay, we can start. Gentlemen, any additions to the agenda?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Highland Park Country Club letting process
Hi, Laura.
update. Hi, Lori.
Hi there. Sorry.
Rebecca Grillo to present.
I'll have this on your screen, so mostly for me to point to.
We do.
So really pleased to be here tonight to present to you guys our concept plans for the Highland Park Country Club. We have been working very hard together to develop a plan that meets our ultimate goal, which was to provide passive open space, recreational space for our community in keeping with Greenprint. And we thank the board for giving us the opportunity to go ahead and do this work in planning, and I'm going to talk to you about what we've been doing. I'll be presenting some of the work of Amalia Schwartz, who we'll be hearing from later tonight on a different topic, so as well as Hay and Associates, who are represented here tonight by Tom Polzine, their president. So, ground this. So tonight we're going to look at a review of what we have heard from our community, including our stakeholders and our own staff. We're going to review how their input was translated into a shared vision for this project, and we're going to look at the conceptual plan itself as was born from that vision. So as a planning group, we convened a public advisory committee. We met with our internal planning committee for staff. We conducted an online survey that drew a little fewer than 400 respondents. We went out and met with people in person at the rec center, and also had one-on-one meetings with stakeholders such as Lake County Forest Preserve District, the Stormwater Management Commission, representatives from the Senior Center, as well as neighbors to the north of us on the property at the Legacy Club and other neighbors in the vicinity. And also we just received public comments because we've had information about the project on our website. What we heard was interesting. We really began to hear similar voices coming together. So we heard first and foremost that people wanted to walk and to bike and to run on this property. We heard that they wanted access to water. There were different ideas about what they wanted to do at water's edge or on the water, but the main thing that we heard was that they wanted to be able to get to it and enjoy it and be able to look at it. We evaluated, as I said, our impact on the neighbors in terms of activity. We found that views were very important to people and that they really enjoyed the fact that you could walk across that property and have a great deal of open space and that sense of openness, which is not as prevalent as some of our other nature facilities. We heard about specialty activities like cross-country running, cross-country skiing, adventure biking. We heard that people wanted to be able to go out there with their kids and with their grandkids and have these kinds of intergenerational experiences. So what does this look like? It looks like nature over the built environment. It takes advantage of existing features on the course, such as those hills that are actually out there near the gazebo, sand bunkers, all kinds of existing cart paths, so that we are able to be cost-effective and creative in the use of the course. It looks like safe passageway for pedestrians and leisure bikers, along with a pathway on the north-south trail that already exists for people who are moving through more quickly on their bikes. It looks like gathering places. Again, this idea that different age groups could gather together. Perhaps this could be an area for programming by some of our nature staff, naturalist staff, or even rec staff. This is actually a small hill that's on the north end of the North Pond, where we would just take advantage of that topography and very simply create benches. It looks like nature play, where again we're providing all kinds of different levels of interaction with nature. Some people just want to go out there and take a walk and not get their feet dirty. Some people might want to actually play in the water. And so using natural materials, things that spring organically from that site, we are able to try to create these experiences in a cost-effective way. And finally, access for everybody, access to water, access to views, all those passive recreational activities that the community expressed were things that they wanted to have. So how does this all come together? You can see this on your screens, I hope. An interesting aspect of this design is that it is built around a couple of frameworks, one of them being the green areas that you see on the concept plans. Those green areas are designed to be surrounded by natural areas plantings, so people pass in and out of them on their way to these destinations that we've created throughout the property. We have activity zones. So starting closer into the building where people said that they'd like to bring their families and their kids, maybe have interaction with the recreation center. We have more of our active play, active zone areas. Moving into the middle, we have our family zone where people might want to come and picnic, or they can take advantage of some of the play areas that are up here. From the Golf Learning Center parking over here and walking across the bridge to enjoy the area. And finally, up to the north near Legacy Club, we have a quiet zone. So that area is designed for primarily habitat based around the needs actually of grassland birds, to be quite specific. We've consulted with our friends at Lake Cook Audubon and found out what kind of native plantings would benefit them the most. So I mentioned along the way, you saw those renderings of different play pockets. Those are spread throughout the property. They're designed so that people move out into it and have destinations, discovery, as they go along. We also are providing our access to Skokie River Woods through the connector path that you're all pretty familiar with. This is the north-south bike trail that I've mentioned earlier. Coming across the property, crossing the river, and meeting up with our gateway path where Skokie River Woods is. We're also providing two potential connections to the north to Route 22 as part of our agreement with the Skokie River Woods property, so that is what this dotted line is shown. And there's another potential access trail an alternate here alongside of Compton Avenue where a building development is going in. One of the, a couple of things that came out of our staff conversations was the need for restrooms on the property. So we have identified that there's a shelter building already there where we could put porta potties, and then perhaps at some future point we do have some information about prefabbed, more designed shelters for restrooms that would be able to be put in there, remembering that we're in a floodplain and we need to have the proper elevation. So that is a site that could continue to serve that purpose if we chose to do that at some point. Speaking of future activities, I'd mentioned adventure biking. That was something that one particular family brought up to us, kind of to give the middle school kids an opportunity for something that they would have that would be unique in the community. So we've identified that as a potential future activity right here off of the bike trail. And we'll be working to see if that's a feasible thing. We need to do all kinds of vetting with PDERMA, et cetera. But we'd be looking for partnerships and perhaps even community support to help create that. So, do you have any questions at this point on this concept plan?
I've got a couple. You show a picture of bikes. Are we going to add paths? Are we going to have walkers and bicycles on the same pathway?
We are.
Because then, as I'm talking about it, the cross-country coach also wanted runners out there.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. So actually,
Sure.
those bikers that we see out there in the spandex, we're thinking that they're using this more direct route across here. So this is our bike trail. The connector path is also designed to be a shared use path, pedestrians, bikes. But we're anticipating that most of the bikes within here, otherwise in the interior trails, are going to be leisure bikers.
Okay.
And we're not adding any trails specific to them, but there are always ways for them to avoid, if passing through here, to avoid walking on the connector trail if they so desire.
And then
And cross-country, cross-country with the dotted line here, this was the mile path that the cross-country coach had laid out when they wanted to do a meet, so our intention is to think that as a known path. Them and for cross-country students
what kind
as
of
well.
path?
Mown, grass,
Moan.
yes.
Got it. Moan.
And then you said something about shelters.
Pardon?
You talk about shelters and water areas. You want that to coincide with that work with the easements that are on the property?
The shelter I'm speaking of exists there already.
Okay. And then last thing, are we going to take out all the bunkers?
No, actually, we're trying to work with them. Some of them will be sand play areas. There's a whole.
Yes.
Well, go
Thank you.
back to the
There's-
picture that you had
Yep.
where you integrated the bunkers. I
Just
think
like
they're called.
moguls, like
Yeah.
these thumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually a suite of native plants that like sandy soil, so that's part of the other plan is to plant them.
All you-
I'll work out backwards, just building on what President Kaplan said. Markers for the milers, are they going to have sort of a distance sort of thing for any of that? Has that been thought of?
We did include on our trail map that we did for Take a Walk, there's mileage there. We haven't formally discussed how we would mark that off on site, but
It's
definitely,
pretty casually.
yeah, and definitely be available on the sign on the website. If you've got a map with you on your phone, then you would know your mileage.
Well, like Heller, has different colored paths, and this is the half-mile path. I think that's pretty helpful.
Okay.
And then in terms of kind of controlling your bike, like I have a bike with a racing bike, and so you can get up to 20 miles per hour or beyond. Better bikers than we can do more than that. There are ways to regulate speed and stuff like that. I know we're over by on Lake Cook, the path that they built over there. There's a huge hill that goes down, yet they regulate it to something like 5 or 8 miles per hour in certain sections because it is a shared
With signage?
with signage.
Okay.
Yeah. When you're talking about activity biking, you're talking about like BMX. You're talking about like off-road
Yes.
sort of things. That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about like a park, like a skateboard park, or anything like that, or
Some of the images that have been presented to us by the public do resemble that. We still have our overriding theme of making this a nature place. So somewhere between those two things is what we would be trying to land with. There's actually some, in that area, there's actually soil material and interesting topography that possibly could lend itself to that. But we haven't worked those details out, but we are thinking along those lines.
Okay, and I just have one more question, if you don't mind. If I could just look up here, if you could help me a little bit. So this is the overlay, so this is the marsh, this is the rainwater, and any of the wetlands. Okay. This has not been, we don't have, it's not in the budget right now. Right, but it came to some 22%, bridge over the wetland, a board, okay, and where it exits, is that east of the turnoff from 41? The street that goes up Trailway, that's what's, and this, I think, is just either, to the west of, this is where the old, what, 7th hole, or, no, R3, the little one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that was yours.
5.
5. Yeah, that's it.
I had a
It's
count.
been a year. Okay, so that would go, but that doesn't exist. Okay, and just a final thing is a comment that I really appreciate that we're considering the places that are closer to the legacy, more of a quiet, you know, I think that that's a sunset avenue, a great idea.
Thank you. So, let's see what all, I wanted, before we look at how much all of this will cost, and the things that you've looked at are within the budget that we've created. But we do know, of course, that the City of Highland Park is partnering with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're doing a watershed-wide study looking for stormwater storage in the watershed. And we know that the Highland Park Country Club lies along that floodplain. So at some point, there will be some kind of storage capacity on that site to help alleviate flooding in the area. What we, I believe, at least with the city, agree upon is that the overriding goal of this property, the reason we have it, is for passive recreation, and that the essence of that will be taken into account when we look at what the stormwater capacity ends up being. So we are sitting in at the conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers and the city as they develop this feasibility study. Their next call is December 14th. We have shown the city of Highland Park a preliminary spatial analysis of what that stormwater capacity could look like while still maintaining enough areas of recreation for our purposes. And the city has offered to help us at least share those with the Army Corps of Engineers so that that is part of the conversation that's being had. We don't know what it looks like, we don't know when it will happen, but there will be something. But we're trying to work together and make that work for our community.
So you'll know after December whether there's better vision, or?
The report, I believe, is, and you know the Army Corps' process is to decide whether they're going to go ahead and do a study. So they're in that stage, and that answer as to whether or not it's worth their while to do a study will come probably in March or April. So our budget for the entire project, including our plantings, our shoreline work, our amenities, is $1.4 million in our capital budget, and that's over the 5-year period, including 3 years of maintenance. We had budgeted $100,000 for amenities, and as you can see, we have apportioned that money within budget to bring you the things that we have been talking about here.
Have we taken into consideration lighting?
We have not included lighting in this budget, and our general conversations have been that we are not providing lighting on the property.
So will we close it at a certain point?
I imagine, like most of our parks, dawn to dusk. The more we can standardize our rules across the district, the the better off we'll be.
I just wonder about that because it is going to be such a large area. How do we, it's easy to do a walk through the beach and tell everyone that they have to go. But when you have so much space here, how are we going to make sure to enforce that? Mainly because I would be concerned that it'd be a safety issue. It gets dark and they're trying to walk back or, that's my only, I would just think about that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. One final slide, next steps. We are required to go to the Lake County Forest Preserve District's Planning Committee with our concept plans because of the easements that you've mentioned earlier. This plan has to be approved by the Lake County full board, so this is the first step toward that. We are going to have a public meeting after we have your review of this document, January 15th, and we'll be posting that information on our park line and on our website so that people are aware that they can come and review and give comment on these conceptual plans. The next step is to go in greater detail into what those amenities look like. Right now we're just talking about location and size and style, but with the next plan you'll have an opportunity to drill down into things like what is water play, what does it look like, how do we create access to water. So that will be presented at our next advisory committee meeting in February likely.
Yes, sir.
I have a concern. Just hearing with the Army Corps and seeing the history of what happens when this place floods. And are you taking into consideration, let's say the Army Corps says, we're not doing anything, we're just going to leave it. How does that affect the money that we'll be putting in to make this a beautiful passive park? How would I don't even know what they're calling those storms that we've had, 10 years, 5 years, 100 years, whatever.
Yearly.
Well, now it's yearly, but how would that affect the money that we're investing in the park?
You're saying the scenario is that the Army Corps does nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this property is going to flood. We've done an inundation analysis so that we know where it floods and for how long. And the idea of it is that we know it's going to flood and we'll try to plan for that, I guess is the best way to put it, and know that there may be some maintenance issues. We're currently looking at the pathways to see what we can do to make sure that we have the most accessible pathways for the most amount of time, so that even if there's flooding, there's a way to get into the park. And as I said, there is maintenance money in the budget.
Okay.
Well, anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You ready? All right. Lakefront Master Plan Update Progress Report.
All right. Get my clicker. Okay, so today I'm going to give you an update, a progress report on the Lakefront Master Plan update effort. I'm going to focus on what we heard. If you recall, we did a community engagement effort this past summer, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So it's what we heard from that and where we're going next with our planning process. So just to bring you back up to speed, so the why we did this. So in 2007, the Lakefront Master Plan was approved. In 2015, when Greenprint was approved, in Greenprint, the recommendation was to update the Lakefront Master Plan because community priorities had changed. So we are following the recommendation from Greenprint and updating our Lakefront Master Plan. And the update is a focus on reprioritization or a prioritization of the goals from the 2007 Lakefront Master Plan that we have not completed. So the planning process was a 4-step process. We started with preparation and data gathering. This past summer, May through September, we did a pretty extensive community outreach effort. And now we're in our planning update. So we're aggregating and analyzing the data that we collected. We're developing and prioritizing goals and objectives and developing recommendations, and we're looking into timeline and performance evaluation. Our hope was to come to you in the last step with a final plan by the end of the year. I think we're looking more into early 2019. So what have we heard? So like I said, we did, this past summer, we focused on community outreach. We had 2 arms of our community outreach. We had a survey, which was online, and there was also a paper format. It was open from May through September, and the questions on that survey were both generally lakefront focused, and there were also some lakefront park specific questions. The second arm of the Lakefront Master Plan community engagement effort was a listening tour. Park staff went to the parks to talk to people in the parks. So we stopped at all of our lakefront parks. We had our open house in May at the Highland Park Country Club. We set up tables at the rec center 2 days this summer. We were at Fourth Fest, and we also went to the Hidden Creek Aqua Park. So it was quite successful. We talked with a lot of people and heard really valuable feedback. So who was represented in the survey? We had 662 survey respondents we were really happy with. 47% of the survey, so I'll preface this that the question was, who is in your household? So the people that were represented in the survey, 47% were adults, 12% seniors, and 41% youth. It was a pretty good even distribution geographically. So the map on your left represents population density. The lighter gray is low density and the darker gray is high density. On the right is the survey respondents. So you can see, hold on if I get my nifty. So this area, the lower southeast quadrant, is Highland Park's denser quadrant. And that's where we had more survey population. We had more survey respondents. So good even distribution. When asked about number of times people are visiting the lakefront, only 31 people said they never go. So I think what I want you to take away from this graph is that people in our community are using our lakefront and they are visiting our lakefront parks. So which lakefront parks are they going to? Now the lighter blue on the right is it's the more than 10 times a year. Sorry, the blues are kind of a little confusing on this screen. So you can see that Rosewood and Park Avenue are the more frequented, more than 10 times a year, and I think that that's indicative of the programmed. Those are our 2 programmed lakefront parks. But I want to highlight the gray bar in the middle, and so that's the 1 to 10 times a year. And you see Rosewood and Moraine. That's people who are going casually to the lakefront. Those are the top 2. And Millard is consistently lower visitation. It has the highest number of people who say they've never been there. How are people getting to the lakefront? Majority of people drive to our lakefront. I don't know that that's surprising, but good data for us to have. Millard and Park Avenue have the higher percentage of walkers. So there are quite a few people who walk to those parks. So park-specific data. The graphs I'm about to show, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on these specific graphs, so they're going to look very graph heavy. I'm just going to highlight what I want you to take away from them, and if you're interested in seeing the graphs, you just ask. So we asked people what they do at these parks. The black is never tried, the red say it's not enjoyable, and the blue is enjoyable. So what I want you to take away from this graph is that at all 4 of our parks, walking and viewing were by far the top 2 activities that people most enjoyed. I think that's the main takeaway here. Quite a few people, said they never tried some of the other more specific activities, but walking and viewing, just viewing the lake, are what people like most. The top ranked improvements. So, like I said, this was a look back at the recommendations that we have not completed from our 2007 plan, and we asked people to prioritize those recommendations. So these pie charts show how people ranked those recommendations 1. So at Rosewood, 178 people said that the ravine walkway improvements was their number 1 choice. I'm just going to go through the number 1 choice from each of the parks. So at Moraine, it is distribution of the beach for humans and dogs, some human access at Moraine. At Park Avenue, 121 people said yacht club building improvements. And at Millard, 65 people said improvements to the breakwater. Some other improvements that we heard people talk about, these are the top 5. I'll just read off the number 1. At Rosewood, it was sand improvements. At Moraine, it was dog restrictions. Millard, visitor amenities. And Park Avenue, it was maintaining the barge and the launch access. So there's a lot of data. This was a highlight of what we pulled out from everything that we heard. So I want to give you an example of how we're trying to aggregate this information and how to make sense of it as we're going into plan development. So this is, we've added weighted average, and I wrote down how to explain weighted average in case I needed to. So
What's more weighted average?
thank you for asking.
We had a long talk about this.
We did. We had a long talk about it. So it's the average of values weighted by relative importance. So the recommendations that were ranked number 1 have a higher weight. So I wanted to be able to look at how we could assess the various rankings that people assign to the recommendations that we put out and be able to look at them globally. So again, this is an example of how we're looking at all of the data, but it's interesting to look at how that panned out. So the top 2 are from Park Avenue, the improvements for non-motorized boaters and improvements for yacht club building, followed by Moraine, arranging the beach to maximize use by humans and dogs and provide support amenities, and then ravine walkway improvements at Rosewood. So again, this is an example of how we're aggregating the data. It's not the final list. I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the data analysis that we are doing right now. So what are the key points in our next steps? So I want to take us back to why we did this. So Greenprint talked about how our priorities have changed. On the left are the principles that were guiding our 2007 planning effort. And what I want you to take away is that our principles really haven't changed. We are still interested, what I heard from the community is that we're still interested in a unique lakefront experience, interested in connectivity and access, varied and appealing lakefront parks, a focus on our environment and public health conditions, sustainability and maintenance, and those were all the things that I heard from our community and things that we are working on. So I think that to take away, the principles are the same. We've achieved a lot of these goals from the 2007 plan, but the emphasis today was a lot about maintenance. There were some operational improvements people mentioned, communication, and access to our lakefront parks. So the plan is going to focus on continuing what we're already doing well and looking at how we can improve. So our next steps are to explore solutions to the priority needs to develop measurable recommendations. We're going to cost out those solutions, develop an implementation plan, share that plan with the board and with the public, and for the recommendations that are capital improvements, we'll integrate those into our capital improvements plan. Are there questions about the Lakefront Master Plan update?
What's your timetable now that we're looking into 2019?
I would say Q1 2019, early 2019 is what I'm targeting right now. January, February.
That was my only question.
Lori? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Amalia.
Ordinance 18-05, tax levy 2018.
This is the most exciting one.
I
It
know.
always is, because you've never heard it before.
Bated breath.
This is the third time that we're talking about property taxes, but it's part of the process, and it's a very important process, so I don't want to miss a step in it. So, in your board packet is the actual property tax levy ordinance that will be filed with Lake County. That is different from the resolution and the truth and taxation hearing, that process that we completed in November. So they are two separate processes, and we have to be mindful of both of them. So the the levy ordinance, it is ordinance number 1805, is what we will be approving next week at our board meeting. It is the same dollar amounts that had appeared in the truth and taxation paperwork, so nothing has changed. And the levy requested will total $11,661,498.
That's it?
Yeah, it was painless, wasn't it?
Well,
Well, getting here, yes.
Yeah, it's a process.
Don't go anywhere.
Don't go away. Okay.
Do the vouchers, please.
The bills presented for the board's review on tonight, December 4th, are checks written from November 9th through November 30th, and they total $524,443. They are budgeted expenditures for 2018 as we kind of start winding up the year.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone from the public like to address the board?
May I introduce Jones Only? He is going to be my shadow for Martin Luther King, ultimately to replace me when I get too old.
Irreplaceable.
So,
Impossible.
Welcome, Joe.
very capable, and she needs to know all of you. She's going to call on all of you for the same things that you do for me. So,
well, we're in
she's the
trouble.
other
Can I get a spelling of your last name, please?
Z as in zebra, A-H-N-L-E. One of the founding families of Highland Park.
Wow. Thank you. And welcome.
Yes.
I have one more thing to add. Can I buy a tree in the country club, or maybe even a Bernstein Grove of trees? Why can't we sell trees as part of our program in the park?
Yes, but we had floated the idea of 18 trees for the 18 holes of the golf course.
Well, I think the foundation would probably want to, would be interested in that idea, Mrs. Bernstein.
So, would we be putting plaques on trees?
We're trying to stay away from that kind of thing. But we have not, like, we are looking at the donation policy for Sunset Valley now that we've redone that, and doing brick pavers instead of all of the benches. So I suspect we'll be doing a likely review for Highland Park Country Club in terms of what opportunities may be available, because we want it to blend with what the ultimate final plan is. So stay tuned.
Listen, I'm even going to take a Bernstein bush. That would be just,
That we can do.
I just like my name.
Would you like
No.
Yeah.
We'll talk offline.
Yes.
Joan,
Okay.
can you tell us a little bit about your volunteer work? We know Mrs. Bernstein and how active she is. What made you want to take over?
Well, I just joined the commission last year, and I wanted to have an active part in it, and so this opportunity presented itself. And my background is customer service, and I actually, and Janet calls this the logistics, and I actually worked in logistics, although cross-country, moving pies and cakes for Sally. So I understand kind of how things mesh and have to get together. So perhaps they have background that will help and give back to the community. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, it's become a really big part of our community that we all look forward to every year. So it's nice that Janet's getting some help, and then for eventually when she's not doing it 100%, someone is familiar with it. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Know where I'm looking. Okay.
Just
Liza?
one thing, I just want to comment on it, that the communications marketing team has put together this
This is my favorite
beautiful
That's nice.
rental brochure for Sunset Valley. So we may bring it back and show it on camera next week, but wanted you to see it because this is a beautiful piece of work.
What do you think about the picture on the third page?
Why did Terry get left out? You couldn't put your arm around Terry? I think Terry's like...
It's a very expensive driver, and I didn't want anybody stealing it. When
Yeah, that's funny. He had a zapper.
Okay. Can I get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Open Meetings Act? Section C2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline of the district, including legal counsel. Section 2C5, the purchase or lease of real estate.
And the other sections that are relevant.
Yeah, it's really just...
And the other sections that are relevant.
Yeah, well, I've seen
Just-
relevant. I was looking for a license, see how we want.
TG. And who's seconding?
I will second.
All right, thank you, guys, we're in closed.
You have to vote.
Thank
I
you.
forgot my tape recorder.
Okay.
I have one on my phone.
No, I need to have the official digital one that can be... You do? Yeah.
Is he even coming? First of all,